We all make promises, right? Every single day. But what's the actual line between a casual, I promise, and a legally binding contract? Well, in this explainer, we're going to break down the essential building blocks that give a promise the full force of the law.
So let's start with a question. You promise to help a friend move, and they say they'll buy you pizza afterward. Is that a real, legally binding contract? I mean, on the surface, it kind of feels like it should be, doesn't it?
But, as you might have guessed, it's a little more complicated than that. While that pizza promise feels like a solid deal, the law actually requires a few very specific, very crucial ingredients to turn a simple agreement into something a court will actually enforce.
So, if it's more than just a promise or a handshake, what exactly does the law see? What is it looking for to say, yep, that's a valid contract?
And here we have it. This is the core legal definition. A contract isn't just any promise, it's a promise that the law takes so seriously that it creates a duty for you to follow through. And if you break that duty, the law steps in and provides a remedy. That's the key.
To build this special kind of promise, you generally need these three things. You can think of them as the foundational pillars, holding the whole thing up. We're going to break down each one so you can see exactly how they work.
Okay, first up, the most fundamental pillar of them all, mutual agreement. This is really just the simple idea that everyone involved is actually on the same page. Without this, you've got nothing. Now, the fancy legal term for this is manifestation of assent, and the key word there is objective. See, a court isn't going to try to read anyone's mind. It's looking for outward, objective proof that both sides really did agree to the deal.
And this proof, it can come in a few different forms. You could have spoken words, you could have actions, or obviously a written document. But the most classic textbook example that courts look for is a clear offer from one person and a clear acceptance of that exact same offer by the other. Simple as that.
All right, let's move on to our second pillar, the exchange. Because, it's not enough to just agree on something. For a contract to be valid, both sides have to give and get something of value. This is what lawyers call consideration. It basically means each side has to either get something of legal value or give something up. It's the what's in it for me part of the deal. Both parties have to have some skin in the game. So, what actually counts as a real exchange? Well, a promise for another promise, that works. But a one-sided promise, like saying you'll give someone a gift, that's not consideration, and neither is promising to do something you were already legally supposed to do anyway. The law just sees that as an empty bargain.
Finally, let's talk about that third pillar, the one that causes a lot of confusion. Does the agreement have to be written down on paper to count?
The rule that governs all this is called the statute of frauds. Now, the name sounds a bit intimidating, but the concept is pretty straightforward. It's a law that says some, but not all, types of contracts have to be in writing to be legally enforceable.
And this is the absolute key takeaway. It is a total myth that all contracts have to be in writing. They don't. Many verbal agreements are perfectly valid. This in-writing rule only kicks in for a few specific categories, like, say, major real estate deals or contracts that are impossible to finish within a year.
So, there we have it. Our three pillars: mutual agreement, consideration, and sometimes a written document. But before we can call it a day, there's one last really important catch we need to talk about.
Because here's the thing. Even if a deal seems to have all three of those building blocks perfectly lined up, it can still be challenged and maybe even torn down.
These challenges are called defenses to formation. For example, someone could argue they didn't have the legal capacity to make a contract. Maybe they were a minor at the time. Now, this doesn't mean the offer, acceptance, and consideration didn't exist, but it introduces a whole new layer of legal questions. It's a really complex topic for another day. So really, it all boils down to this simple three-point checklist. First, is there objective proof that everyone agreed? Second, was there a real two-way exchange of value? And third, if the law says it has to be, is it written down? In the end, it all comes back to this one core idea. The whole point of all these legal rules is to separate the casual, everyday promises from the really serious ones, the ones where the law will actually step in, create that duty, and give you a remedy if things go south. And that leads me to a final thought for you. Now that you know the building blocks, think about your daily life. Buying your morning coffee, clicking agree on new software terms, taking on a freelance gig. How many times have you actually created a legally binding contract this week without even thinking twice? I bet the answer will surprise you.